what gets in my way is this sort of attachment or focus to outcome. I mean, that what you're really saying is it's joy for joy's sake in the moment. It's not to try and get something.
Those are very good words, and we agree with that. We teach that. But here is the dilemma that you face with that. The contrast gives birth to a desire, and the desire is something that you want to experience. And wanting to experience it does mean you are looking for an outcome. And then there is the awareness of where you stand relative to the outcome. And so this business of paying attention to the way you feel is about soothing that time between where you are now and the outcome. But we want to do more than soothe it. We don't want to soothe it so that the outcome comes faster. We don't want to soothe it so that the results are more perfect. We want to soothe it because we want you to have a joyful experience because you never get it done. In other words, if you don't learn that it's supposed to feel good and you don't learn how to make it feel good, then your life cannot be good because there will always be something else that's unfinished. There will always be something else imperfect. There will always be something else in the making, you see. And even though we say to you again and again, you never get it done and you cannot get it wrong, still you choose often not to feel pleasure in what you consider to be less than perfect unfolding experiences. And we say, since you get to continue to unfold, why would there ever be any grief in it not unfolding perfectly the first time? That would be like watching a child beginning to walk and saying, "Get up, you little dummy. Get up, you little dummy. Why can't you walk?" You don't do that with children. You enjoy every bit of progress they make to a certain point. In other words, you like it when they're not crawling, and then you like it when they crawl, and then you like it when they find their balance, and you clap when they take their first steps, and you like it when they begin to run, and you like it when they adjust their skills. Why is it that you are so ready to have your human experience cap out at some sort of completion? Why is it that you say, this is prime of life? This is as far as your feeling of wanting love is, and this is as far as your feeling of progress is. In other words, at what point should we decide that we should start feeling negative about our experience? And we say never, never. Just continue to be this ongoing, always evolving, always expanding person, always standing in a perfect place. Always standing in a perfect place, because the universe is always hearing you. And your experience is always valid and valuable. And your asking is always important. And the expansion of the universe happens because of it. And good comes from everything that you are and be. And so why not lighten up? Why not start to love yourself more? Why scrutinize your every experience and demand perfection? Why not say, I'm a work in progress and I'm enjoying the expansion? Why was it only fun when you went from crawling to walking? Why can't it be fun when you're learning how to interact with people? Why can't it be fun when you have negative emotion that you didn't mean to have, and then you work harder and have more positive emotion more of the time? In other words, why can't all of the progress be fun? Why can't all of the expansion be fun?
Well, it just occurred to me, boom, that, I think one of the things that was going on for me was that a certain outcome meant that I was worthy. I was measuring my worthiness by the quality of the outcome, which is totally ridiculous.
So that's because instead of using your joy as your success meter,
yes,
you have been using the appreciation of others. In other words,
oh wow,
others say to you, this makes me happy and this makes me sad, so if you want to make me happy, you need to do this. So you learn to perform by other standards in the quest for their appreciation. And that's why we say all their appreciation ever did was be a catalyst to hook you up to source energy. Why not go directly to the root of your source energy? So why not leave everybody else and what they think out of the equation? And when you learn to leave everybody else and what they think out of the equation, then you can go directly to the thought which feels better, and then life is fun right now. You see, as you compare yourself with each other, there's always someone who has had more evolution on some subject. All genius is attention to a subject, because law of attraction does all of the work. So if someone gives attention to a subject and they don't divert the attention by looking at a lot of other things, or more importantly, looking at the opposite of that thing, then they're going to have expansion in that experience. Everything that you know about you there is someone else who has advanced it further. And if you are evaluating your value by your comparison with other attractors, then you shoot yourself in the foot over and over again. But when you stand back and you say, wait a minute, I've been involved in many things. I didn't give my attention only to that one thing. This is the way my life is unfolding. The criteria of my success is about the joy that I am feeling in this moment and in this moment and in this moment. Then before you know it, what others are doing becomes irrelevant, and you stop being so self-critical or so self-judging. And we think that is a wonderful thing. If you could get into the mode of asking your inner being what your inner being thinks about you, what you will begin to notice is your inner being always adores you, but you can only hear what your inner being is saying when you are in a place of reasonable connection. Now, the universe will knock itself out to get the message through to you, because whenever you ask, endless circumstances and events are arranged in order to help you to understand, and you're becoming more and more aware of all of that. But worthiness is something that you were born feeling and something that you unlearned. And to relearn it is not a difficult thing if you understand the basis of discovering it. And the basis of discovering appreciation is to practice appreciating others. The basis of being loved is to find lots of things to love. The path to well-being is to exaggerate well-being. Your emotions are your guide to everything. So if we were standing in your physical shoes, all of you, and we were wanting to proceed through the next few days in a most meaningful way on the heels of what you've been hearing here, we would play games like, wouldn't it be nice if? We would play games like, well, the thing I love about this is. In other words, we would ramp up our list of positive aspects and our rampages of appreciation. As Esther looked out of the window of her sleeping suite just now and saw many of you out in the courtyards visiting and sitting and sunning, she said, look at them, the little baskers. And Jerry says you have to be careful who you say that to. You might be misunderstood. But she loved that so many of you were deliberately looking for a moment in time where you could find a reason to feel good. And that is the way we would spend our life. That is the most valuable use of time. So then you say, but I have to go to work. I can't just sit around and bask all day. And we say, then at work, we would look for positive aspects. We would look for reasons to praise. We would look for things to feel good about. We would count our blessings at every turn. We would just make that be such a powerful part. That would be the top thing on our to-do list. Today, no matter where I'm going, no matter what I'm doing, no matter who I'm doing it with, it is my dominant intent to look for things that I'm wanting to see. And before you know it, you will have trained yourself. You will have relearned that natural feeling of well-being. And no wrongdoing, no incompletion can ever come as a result of that. Life is really good, and you are physically focused creators in what we see to be the best environment of creation that has ever existed. The leading edge is where it all is. It's where all of the power is. And so, as your experience gives birth in you to a desire that is new or maybe one you are reliving, and it feels good to you while you are contemplating it, then life is breathing through you, Source is breathing through you, and it is the optimum creative experience. See yourself as the directors of the energy that creates worlds. And see the energy as understanding you and caressing you and gently opening before you the next wonderful experience. And trust that that energy that is your legacy and amplifies your worthiness. It would not be there otherwise. And it is always there. And then begin practicing your conscious awareness that you can pinch it off or let it flow. Pinch it off or let it flow. Find someone in your mind who has been big in your experience and pick on them in your mind. Make 5 or 10 statements of criticism about them and feel life diminishing. Feel the empty feeling that ensues. And then take the same person and make an equal number of statements of appreciation and feel your resources, your source return. And then say to yourself, that is the issue of worthiness? In other words, it's all been my doing. I've been the keeper of that gate all along. It hasn't been about actions, past or present. It hasn't been about anyone else's evaluation. It's only been about what I'm doing with my valve right now. So here you are, extensions of source energy. And here is this juncture called now, where you can make a decision right now to focus upon something that allows the energy to flow, or you can make a decision to focus right now on something that doesn't allow the energy to flow. So you've got your hand on the valve right now, and we say, doesn't it make the decisions easily? In other words, nothing's more important than I feel good. Why would I ever use anything as a subject in my now to not feel good? Why would I focus upon all the things that I have to do that I don't have done when it makes me feel that overwhelming feeling? Why would I think about all the things that I did in the past that if I knew then what I knew now, I would have done differently, that feels me full of regret? Why would I amplify that regret right now? Why would I look for things that make me feel bad? And why, when I discover one that I didn't know I was even looking for that made me feel bad, why would I stay there and keep amplifying it? And we say, it's because right now it feels like the path of least resistance. You got to practice something else and make that the path of least resistance. And it is our promise to you that as you remember or relearn or rediscover this connection to source on a consistent basis, the path of least resistance will come fully within you to the point that it will be hard for you to have a negative thought. It will be hard for you to not trust someone. It will feel really odd for you to feel uncomfortable about something. You'll get so used to the world honoring you and the seas parting for you and doors opening for you and things going the way that you just thought that they would go. You'll find yourself saying things like, well, I knew that would be all right. Well, I knew that would be all right. Well, I knew that would be all right. Well, there's not ever a problem there. Everything's all right. You'll find yourself just moving forward, expressing your appreciation of where you are and your understanding that it's just supposed to get better and better and better. You'll find yourself turning on the television and tuning into something that is so far different than your vibration, and there would be nothing that would ever be interesting enough that it would captivate your attention and give you that knot in your stomach. In other words, you just find yourself immediately knowing that that's not going to get me there, that's not going to get me there, that's not going to get me there. In fact, you might turn that television off altogether. You might never buy another newspaper. You might not listen to the radio. You might not go to places that you are accustomed to going. In other words, you'll get so connected to source energy that you'll be like the bird that is flying from the impulse of that which is coming forth from within. People say, oh, how do those birds know to migrate? Were they born with little maps in their head? Do they have some sort of sonar? And we say, no, they're tuned in, tapped in, turned on. They've got this direct link to the broader view that has an aerial view of the energy grid. In other words, source energy knows that they are looking for well-being and gives them an in-the-moment impulse that will ultimately lead them to where they're wanting to be. And none of you are different from that. You have moment by moment, second by second guidance. Source energy is aware of you, knows everything that you've ever wanted, heard everything that you've ever said in relationship to what you wanted, understands fully every amended desire that you've ever held, and agrees totally that you are the deserving, worthy recipient of all of these things, and is knocking itself out in endless, never-ending ways, setting up circumstances and events to accommodate you on everything that you want, big or small, and is in every single moment of your experience opening doors, opening doors, opening doors, and is saying things to you constantly like, there it is, look over there. There it is, how about over here? There it is, look over there. What about that? There it is, there it is, there it is, there it is, there it is. How about this? How about that? Look over there. There it is, there it is. Your inner being and source is saying, we are adoring you. Here is the loving gesture that will get you to where you're wanting to go. Look over there, look over there, look over there, look it over there. Beloved, look over there. And then you say, well, I don't feel worthy. And we say, the universe revolves around you. The earth spins in its orbit. You are here in the perfect platform. Source energy is surrounding you. Your every desire or whim, big or small, is being answered. There could not be a better, more deserving experience